All right, what's up, my peoples? I'm Don Wilson. I'm the leader of the BC Libertarian Party and a family lawyer in British Columbia, and also YouTube's favorite movie reviewer. I know it's Wednesday right now, not Tuesday. Sorry, I missed you guys last night. I got in a bit late. I was hanging out with Bill Morrison, deputy leader of the BC Libertarian Party, and my fiancee Julia. So I got in a bit late last night and wasn't able to do a review of the movie I saw last night, which was Vice, and I loved this movie. It was exquisite, super duper trooper. Okay, let's see if I can do better than that. Exquisitely well acted. Wow, just having a bit of a mind fart. Christian Bale was Dick Cheney, and he was absolutely excellent. Amy Adams was Lynn Cheney, his wife. Sam Rockwell played George W. Bush. Steve Carell played Donald Rumsfeld, and there are other. I mean, the acting was so good in this movie, just bang on the whole time. Every player. My favorite was Sam Rockwell as George Bush. It was just so seamless in the role. Like the actor disappeared completely into this character, and I found him to be so natural and so enjoyable to watch. Of course, Christian Bale as Dick Cheney was a lot more central and also very excellent in this movie. You know, he had a lot of very particular mannerisms that he had picked up from Cheney, and just did a great job capturing the man. Well, I don't know why I'd say that. I don't know anything about Dick Cheney in terms of who he is as a man, really. He did a great job creating a character on screen. It's just a great character. Great character work, consistent mannerisms. He carried his body, so well, and created a different persona or person on screen in a really effective way. Where it was even hard to see that it was Christian Bale, even though we all, of course, know who he is. Christian Bale's a great actor. He's done a lot of great work, and in fact, it's hard for me to think of even movies where I thought he was bad in. I haven't loved everything he's been in, but he's always been pretty good, and this was no exception. Amy Adams was excellent as well. Really, just nobody was trying to hog the screen, which is nice. Like with the actors, like they're just doing their job really nicely, and focusing on blending into their, or being their character and just embodying that. And I thought everybody in this movie did a really good job of that, and it made it super enjoyable to watch. Just exquisite acting throughout. Just like everyone killed it, with really like no low points. I feel bad. I didn't make notes of the other actors in it, but like everyone, it's just world class acting. The movie was shot so well. I mean, just absolutely gorgeous isn't quite the right word, but what I was thinking of when I was watching it is, this movie looks like no other movie. There's no other movie that's ever been made that looks like this movie. It's completely unique, and almost every shot is done in a way that is refreshing. It's just something, no matter how many movies you've seen before, well, obviously you've never seen anything like it. I've never seen anything like it. How many millions of hours of we've spent in front of screens, or I've spent in front of screens. Very novel, very interesting way to shoot a movie. Even just ordinary moments like him getting pulled over in a car to start the movie. Very creatively shot. I just really loved that. As someone who's made some amateur movies as a kid and liked playing around with that. And put a few movies together. I really appreciate someone who sees differently, who's like constantly rethinking what it means to be behind the camera and what the whole picture is going to look like, and really is redefining what movies are. And that's very high praise, and it's like highfalutin or what have you, but this film, to my mind, really deserved it. in terms of how it was shot. Just like I I gotta look into who was the, I guess, cinematographer behind it, and director. This is, not a very good review, I guess, but I wanted to get this up and get my thoughts up before too many more days passed by here, and without a review. Like I said, I usually just go in to these movies pretty cold, and I want to get an honest reaction. Did I enjoy it, and did I not, and what did I enjoy about it, and what did I hate about it? So this movie really impressed me, and there was a time, and while I was watching it, the first 20 to 25 minutes, I felt like that movie was in really rarefied air, and for lack of a better analogy, like a really rarefied place. That movie, especially to start, really, maybe even the first 30 or 40 minutes, comes out just perfect. I mean, like, just perfect in execution. Like, the way it looks, the story being told in a compelling, coherent, and an interesting way, novel way. The acting just being bang on. And it was doing this really interesting thing for a while, about Chaney, presenting him as both, it simultaneously was honoring him and being critical of him at the same time. So at its best, this movie was succeeding at both of those things simultaneously. It was really, it was euphoric. It was actually euphoric to watch. That's, it's a strong word, but I was just blown away watching it. Their handling of this character, and again, it's like it succeeded because it wasn't, it wasn't about Dick Cheney the man. Of course it was, but the movie was about itself. Like, the characters were integral to themselves. The visuals, the acting, the story, all were one piece, and it was about itself. So there was just, like I said, this first 20 to 30 minutes, I was just blown away by how well this movie was working. Now, there came a time in the movie when it came a little bit down from the sun for me, as it seemed to me to dabble a little bit with contemporary politics. I won't say contemporary politics. It got overtly political, I feel, in a few places. And just, for me, aesthetically, I just really hate that in movies when instead of watching the story or the art as it is, I get the impression or feeling that all of a sudden the director or the writer has inserted themselves personally in and is now trying to tell me, the right political attitude about this event or that event. Now, with a movie about Dick Cheney, a biography about Dick Cheney, biopic about Dick Cheney, some of that is certainly inevitable, and I didn't find that this movie was gross about it. I didn't think it didn't ruin the film by any stretch. In fact, the film it was so well made. It was so well shot and so well acted, and the story was really well told. Like, the story was really interesting too. Like, I don't want to give any spoilers, but the narrator of the story it's a very, very refreshing take on it. I really appreciate the mind of the person who came up with telling the story in this way. And yes, it was critical of Cheney and Bush and that administration, but I think it also did a good job of respecting the man's strengths as a human, and his, showing times when he was compassionate, showing times when he was very strong, even if it wasn't consistent, even if it wasn't in the direction that perhaps the liberal filmmakers would have liked. They honored Dick Cheney, I think, and again, it's not about Dick Cheney the man. They honored the character that was on their screen, and they made him a full dynamic person, and I really thought that was, sort of respecting this man, fearing this man, hating this man, liking this man, understanding him, being boggled by him, all the things that you'd get with somebody who, achieves something like that. You get a complex of emotions. When you comprehend somebody's full life. Unlike poor story writing, you just get a caricature or a stereotype, or worse, just like a political idea drawn into the shape of a human. They didn't do this. This movie succeeded at creating great characters and putting them in a well-told story that's told in a completely unique and interesting way. Absolutely a success. But that all being said, I did find the overt, when they started going into the overt politics, it did take away from the story for me, and it did take away from the enjoyment. It broke me out of just being in the movie and made me start thinking about politics again. Like, you don't want your movie audience to be thinking about the election, like the current, or the current year while they're watching your movie, right? You want them to be in your movie and just like. Now, I think maybe if I was more sympathetic to the political views of the creators, which I don't know, just maybe more leftist, a little. They weren't leftists, but more left wing. I think left wing is fair. I think, I'll give the filmmakers credit in this sense that if I was in that political philosophy, I think the politicization of the film would have hit me the right way. I think it would have been a good level of meta in the movie, in the sense that, like, it would have pulled me out just enough to stimulate my pleasure centers, at like validating my thoughts and beliefs about, that are hovering behind my experience of this story and this art. So I could see that really working for somebody who is right in the zone of the political philosophy of the creators. But I would contend that, be mindful when you're making something like that. That's not the only audience, and that's always going to be a narrow portion of your possible audience. And I really think they could have succeeded at making this into a truly transcendental film in terms of its quality if they just held back, which is so hard to do, because when you start getting to that position of relevance that you've earned by the obvious level of skill and dedication that you're putting into your craft, that you get to be in that position where you rightly deserve people's respect and command their attention. I can only imagine how hard it is to not then make it about yourself, because you're there, and start trying to use that position you've earned to persuade people or to control people. But I really think you gotta hold back and let your work be its own thing. And if the filmmakers had done that here, I think we would have all been left with something that was pretty damn perfect. As it was excellent. I highly recommend it. Very enjoyable film. Very, interestingly shot. If there was an aesthetic criticism I would make, apart from the politicization, which again wasn't too persistent, like it was sort of a few points where they kind of asymptotically approached politicization. I don't know why I just said it like that. There was just a couple points where they went political, but the other aesthetic criticism I would make is that at one point in the film they start using these models of like the White House and of various other political offices, and they start using figurines to represent individuals that are in the Bush administration, and they use this as a device to explain a sort of complicated theater or role playing that's going on in the administration as Cheney exerts control in the administration. It worked. It wasn't bad, but I'm criticizing it from the point of experiencing the movie as almost being perfect. That worked, but not. But I think I just would have used a little bit less of it. Or none of it. It was very very interesting and very novel. So if you haven't seen it, that's going to sound like a very strange thing that I'm describing, and it is. But the film, is cleverly self-referential. It's meta at the right times. It's it's a postmodern film in that sense, but it's also encapsulated. So I don't know why I'm using such fucking meaningless words. Part of my language, I can't swear. I just did. But it's postmodern or self-referential in the sense that it breaks the fourth wall, and it shows self-awareness, but I think in really interesting ways, and that oddly don't really pull you out of the film. So anyways, that was just a mild aesthetic criticism. I thought it was interesting the first moment I saw the diorama, and then they only really used it like 2 or 3 times, and I would have just, aesthetically, I think just the once it got a bit cheap. No, that's too harsh even to say that. But I think the creators could have trusted their audience's intelligence a bit more to understand just a narration of what was happening. It was a bit complicated who was, kind of in the administration and who was out and why. So on one hand, I appreciated the ingenuity and the creativity of using something like that. On the other hand, I would have just turned it down tiny little bit. Apart from that, exceptionally well-made film. Highly recommend seeing it. It's one of the most creatively produced movies I've seen in many years. Like, I don't know. That's a big statement, but it was very, very creative, very novel, very interesting. Vice about Dick Cheney and his biopic. Great cast, extremely creatively shot, very creatively told, and the story is very creatively told. Highly recommend it. Go check it out before it's out of theaters. I bet it's cooler than Aquaman, which I haven't seen yet. Maybe I'll see it next week. Some people said it was actually fun. That's cool. Thanks so much, and have a nice night.